Amen. Hey, you can have a seat. My name is Mike, and I get to be pastor here at Mission Valley Church. If this is your first morning with us, we're really glad that you're here. We're really glad that you braved all this rain to get out here, the floods and all the irrigation and all that stuff, whatever. We're glad that you're here. I hope you're staying dry, and it's good to see you. If I've never met you before, I would love to do that, and so there's a couple ways we can meet. The first is this. I'm going to be standing out in the lobby-ish, depending on how bad it's raining, right after service. Love to shake your hand out there, fist bump, whatever you're into. Another way that we can meet, if you want, just fill out a Connect card, turn it into the info table, and somebody will hand it to me, and then I'll give you a call or a text this week. Or you can send me a text, 602-763-3331. Maybe during the course of the sermon, I say something that you don't like, and so you want to text me and tell me about it. Or maybe I say something you do like, and you want to text me and talk about it. We'd be happy to do that. So today we are finishing up this new series that we've been in. It's just a 3-week series, a really short series called Generosity, Open-Handed Living. Last week, Jared reminded us that we are learning about generosity because God has been so generous with us. That when you just stop and think about it, God has been very generous with us. And so it is important that we talk about generosity. We realize that we are sinners and God is a righteous judge. And though we don't deserve it and we could never earn it, God sent Jesus down here to save us. That was a generous thing to do. He sent his one and only son. And when Jesus was here, he lived the life that we couldn't and then gave us credit for it. He took the death that we deserved so that we wouldn't have to. And then he made a way for all who believe to spend eternity with him. That is a generous thing to do. We didn't earn it. We don't deserve it. And yet it was done for us. And so we can be generous. And so in the first week, we learned about being generous with our time. That we can spend time with Jesus in prayer, through reading scripture, through just being in his word. We can just talk to him whenever we want. Last week, Jared reminded us that we can be generous with our service, that we can serve as much as is good for us, and we can do so lovingly, without quarreling or being upset about it. We can do all that. And today, we get to talk about being generous with our money. Now, this is where you might be tempted to think, I knew it. I knew it. I knew they were eventually going to ask me for my money. I knew it. Church has always asked for money, and this is when they were going to do it. I've been waiting and waiting to see if this church would ask me for my money. They haven't talked about it. I've been here for a long time. They don't talk about it that much, and now they're doing it. I knew it. And if that's you, I want you to know something that I said the first week of this series, and Jared repeated last week. I want to make it perfectly clear, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. I don't want anything from you. I don't want anything from you. I desperately want so much for you. That's what I want. I want for you. I don't want anything from you. I don't want your time. I don't want your service, and I don't want your money. And I really want you to know this last one clearly. I'm not looking for your money. I am an unpaid volunteer pastor. I'm an unpaid volunteer pastor. Like, I unpaid volunteer. I've said co-vocational, and some people are like, I don't even know what that means. Here's what it means. It means I do not get a paycheck from Mission Valley. I don't get paid here. I don't have an expense account here. I don't get a tax write-off for working here. I don't have insurance here or housing allowance here. And so if you came here today and you think, hey, I'm a volunteer, and I volunteer on the greeter team, or I volunteer on the worship team, I would tell you I volunteer as the pastor of the church. We're doing the same thing. I'm a volunteer. So when I say I don't want your money, it's probably more accurate to say even if you chose to give your money here, I don't have access to it anyway. Like I wouldn't get it. Like I can't get it. But I want so much for your life. I don't want your money, but I want a lot for your life. I want you to use your time well, to be open-handed, to be generous. I want you to serve well, to be open-handed with it, to be generous. And I want for you to use your money well, to be open-handed and generous with it. Now, you may also say, well, don't we talk about this every year? Maybe you'd say that, hey, don't we talk about this every year? Didn't we talk about money like a year ago? Didn't we already do that? Like I was looking back and I was checking the sermon. I think we already talked about money. And I would say, yeah, probably once per year we have a money sermon. Probably once per year we talk about money. And I want to apologize for that. I really do. I'm so sorry that we only talk about it once a year. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, because I know it's such an important topic. I really want to apologize that we only get this on the sermon calendar about once a year, because I know what an important topic it is. And so I know we really should probably talk about it more often. And with Jared's help, we'll do that. We'll just talk more about money, and everybody will be so happy for it. One person this morning came up to me, like kind of unsolicited, and said, I'm so glad you're talking about money today. I love when churches talk about money. And I won't say her name in front of everybody because that would be weird, but she did. it. A real live person said it. And I was like, all right, let's go. Because the Bible talks about money a lot. And more specifically, Jesus talks about money a lot. It's one of the subjects that Jesus talks about the most. If you just read through the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll see Jesus talk about money a lot. Not because Jesus needs your money either. I want to be so clear. Jesus doesn't need your money. He doesn't. Jesus is God, and so he doesn't need your money. He doesn't need your money at all. So why does Jesus talk about it so much? Because Jesus knows that we all, when we're honest, Jesus knows what we know when we're honest. He knows how closely we tie money to our hearts. That's why Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Jesus knows that we tie money together around in our hearts. Jesus knows how money intertwines with our heart, how we use our money tells on us. The way that we use our money, it tells on us. It tells what we really value. If you just look at what you spent money on, it would tell a lot about the things that are actually important to you. Oh, not the things you would tell the world are important to you, not the things you might post on social media are important to you, but your money will tell the things that are important on us. Our money also lies to us. It tells us that it can keep us safe and protect us from things that it never could. Money promises to do all kinds of stuff for us that it can't do. Money literally cannot buy happiness. It literally cannot buy security. And no matter what you think, no matter what you've been conditioned to think by the world that we live in or the media, you could never have enough of it to keep you safe. I have a friend who tells me that his daughter works in a pretty nice hospital in a really nice area of town. And when people come in and they mention that they're sick, that they have cancer, sometimes they will ask, what would it cost to get this handled? People think that there's some kind of like special room for the people that have a lot of money. Like, hey, I got cancer and I don't want to deal with this. How much would I have to pay? Is there like a special room for people that have a lot of money? And she has to look at them and tell you the same thing that I would tell you. Your money can't do that. It can't keep you safe. It can't buy you out of sickness. It can't buy you out of certain tragedy. It cannot buy you out of certain hardship. And it'll lie to you and say that you can. And if you look at the Bible in its entirety, it will tell you true things about money. If you just read through it, if you just read through God's word, it will tell you that money is a tool to be used, not a God to be worshiped. That we use money. We don't let money tell us what to do. We use it. That money and possessions and treasures come to us from God to steward, not to covet. That if you were to look at the things that you have, if you were to look at the things that you have around your house and in your bank account, you should think of all of it as gifts from a generous God to you to steward, not to covet. Not to hold on and see how much of it we can get. That money can be held with open hands. The Bible will tell you that. And that we can be generous with our money. There's so many stories of generosity, and we're going to look at one of them today. I've said this before, but I will say it again as a way of review. The whole world is trying to find ways to get money, make money, invest money, keep money, save money, hoard money, even steal money, and Christians are giving it away. Christians just give money away. Christians give lots of money away to lots of different organizations. That's what they do. And yes, it is true that Christians do make money. Yes, Christians spend money. Yes, Christians save money. Yes, Christians invest money. But Christians also give it away because that's what the Bible would tell us to do. That's what Jesus would tell us to do. I've preached it like this before, but as a way of repeating it, just kind of a reminder. Maybe you were in here a couple of years ago when we had all the kids in the room and we learned about the 4 ways that Christians give money. It was a cool Sunday. We gave every kid that walked into the room 10 quarters and we just talked about how Christians give their money away. And we let the kids participate in this, but I want you to imagine 4 buckets, and you don't even have to imagine them because we have them up here. Just imagine 4 buckets. Imagine the 4 buckets, and they are tithing and blessing and alms to the poor and generosity. The tithe is this. The tithe is 10%. It's what it means. Tithe is 10%. Somebody will say, well, I don't think that tithe is 10%. Like I tithe, but I don't 10%. Well, tithe literally means 10%. It's the translation for tithe. And some people will say, well, I thought that was in the law and we don't have to do that anymore. And I would tell you, no, it actually came from before the law. Way before the law existed. Somebody tithed. Abraham tithed. Look what it says in Genesis 14:18. And he blessed him and said, blessed Blessed be Abraham, by God Most High, possessions of heaven and earth, and blessed be God who has delivered your enemies into your hands. And Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. When Abraham met Melchizedek, he gave him a tenth. This is before the law. So the people that say, well, I don't think we have to tithe anymore because that was part of the law. No, the tithe was before the law. Like it goes before the law, then the new covenant. And it's been part of all of it. And then also, the law also talks about it. Leviticus says this: every tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or the fruit of the trees, is the Lord's. It is holy to the Lord. Like you give the tithe. That's God's money. That's what it is. And then some people will say, well, you don't have to do that anymore because Jesus came around. Well, look what Jesus said. Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. So you do the stuff that Jesus talks about, but you don't neglect the tithe. The tithe was established before the law, prescribed in the law, and affirmed by Jesus, and it is literally giving 10% of the money you get back to God. That's how it works. That's what a tithe is. It's a real simple thing. If you get $1,000, you give $100 in tithe. That's how it works. We've been doing this with our kids since they were little. If they get a babysitting job, if they get an allowance for cleaning up the house, if they do anything, if they get $5, they know that 50 cents of that goes right back to God. It's how it works. That is the tithe. That's how it works. It's how God describes it. If you want to talk about that, please call me this week. If you really want to talk about it in depth and have a lot of conversation about it, call Jared up. He'd love to talk to you about it. He loves this, talking about this kind of stuff. He just loves it. You can do that. And Jared's on staff here now. You can talk to him all you want. He loves talking about stuff like this. If you say, I don't understand tithe, talk to Jared. But church, this is not a sermon on tithing. The second way that Christians give is they bless. They bless. It's blessings. 1 John 3:17. But if anyone has the world's good and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Blessing someone is simply blessing them, doing something nice for them. It's something that people do. Get together with your community group and help someone in need to fix their car. That's a blessing. You don't do that in lieu of the tithe. You do that in addition to the tithe. The tithe is a discipline. It's just something you do. You get $100, you give 10. You get $1,000, you give 100. You get $1 million, you give a lot. That's what you do. That's 10%. And then there's this other thing that is blessing. You help somebody out. You get together with a group of people and help them out. Buy your buddy dinner. Give a $100 handshake to someone you know could use the extra help. Go up to that friend of yours with little kids and hand them a gift card to dinner and offer to watch those kids. That is a blessing. And you don't have to seek permission to bless people. Here's an unkept secret. If you know somebody in this church that has little kids and you wonder, I wonder if they could use a date night. Yes. If you see somebody walking around here with little kids and you think, I wonder if they ever could use somebody to watch those kids and maybe a gift card for dinner. Yes, 100% they could use that. 100% they need that. And you could bless them whenever you want. And you don't have to wait for them to ask. That's different. This is just, hey, you didn't even ask. Here it is. It's a blessing. Go up to that friend of yours with the little kids, hand them a gift card, and offer to watch those kids. Those are blessings. But this is not a sermon on blessing. That's not what this sermon's about. There's also alms to the poor. Proverbs 19:17. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. This is giving money to people that you know need it. You can do this by stocking the food pantry. You can do this by donating money to buy turkeys for those in need. You can make up 20 unhoused people packs and put them in your car and hand them out. If you wonder if people need the money that you have or need the granola bars or the water bottles or whatever, they do. And when you're driving around town, you could sit there and say, that guy doesn't really need it. I wonder what he'll do with my money. Well, give him some water and a granola bar. All I know this morning is it's wet and cold outside. And I bet you a lot of people could go for a cup of coffee today, and you can just do that. That's alms to the poor. And that is not in lieu of the tithe. That is in addition to the tithe. That's just what you do. We can do that if we hold our money with open hands. You see the difference between a blessing and alms to the poor is with alms to the poor, you'll know you're doing that because those people are probably asking you for it. They're saying, hey, could you spare some money? A blessing is like, hey, you didn't even ask me for it, but I could see that you probably could use it. You could bless people, you could give alms to the poor, but this is not a sermon on giving alms to the poor either. This is not a sermon on tithing. I've already done that. This is not a sermon on blessing people. I've done that. You can go back and listen to the podcast. This isn't a sermon on alms to the poor because I've already done this. And then the fourth way that Christians give is generosity. 2 Corinthians 8:7, at the end of this section of this letter, where Paul is commending this church for the way that they've given. We'll get to other verses in just a little bit. He says this about giving. He says, but as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in all earnestness, and in our love for you, see that you excel in this act of grace also. Later on in the sermon, I'll give you the first 5 verses of this so you'll know he's talking about money. Paul is encouraging this church that he's writing this letter to excel in giving, to give generously. If you excel in giving, you can't excel in giving if you're giving 8%. You're not there yet, right? And 8% is great. That's a place to start. But 10% is what we've been prescribed, right? And then when you give above that, that's where generosity starts. Generosity starts after 10%. And Paul's saying, hey, I'm going to encourage you to excel in this act of grace, to give more than that. Excel in this. Give generously. Give more than 10%. Try giving 11% or 12% or 15% or 20% or more. Some of us have been blessed to the point that giving 10% is just a start, and we can give more. We can hold our money with open arms and open hands and just give more of it away. And this is absolutely a sermon on generosity, so let's focus on generosity today. Here's the big idea. Christians are generous with their money. When we were talking about this sermon series, we said, hey, we're going to talk about time, but it's not that we want more of your time, it's that we want you to spend more time with Jesus. Like, that's what we're talking about. And then we said, hey, then we're going to talk about service, and it's not that we want you to serve more, it's that we want you to serve open-handedly, to serve well, to serve in love, to do all those kind of things. And today when we're talking about money, it's not mostly that I want you to give more money, I just want you to learn how to be generous with it. I just want you to learn how to just be open-handed with it. And so what does it look like? Well, let's look at this story from the Bible that Jesus tells. It's in Mark chapter 12, verse 41 through 44. It says this, and he, Jesus, sat down opposite the treasury and watched the people putting money into the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums. So this is there in the court. This is in the court of the temple, and Jesus is watching as people are coming up, and they're putting money into the offering box. We have an offering box over there. This offering box would have been a little bit more conspicuous. It would have been made of metal, and as people would put their money in it, you could probably hear it. You would be able to hear it. Maybe we should put a big old bucket back there so that when you put money in it, you could really hear it. That'd be funny. People wouldn't like that kind of thing. So you don't have to do it at all. You can just go on PushPay now, right? But the way they worked then is they would have this big old bucket, and the people would put their money in it, and you would hear it clang. Like, boom, somebody came in. Wow, that was a lot of money. Boom, that's a lot of money. And people would notice, like, whoa, Joe put a lot of money in over there. Wow, that's fantastic. And then Jesus says this, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. 2 coins, 2 small coins that together combine to make a penny, right? These 2 small coins that together combine to make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. And you would wonder, well, maybe Jesus doesn't know how to do math. Maybe his disciples are like, Jesus, do you not math? Because she put in 2 small coins. Maybe Jesus' hearing is bad, and you couldn't hear the big thuds of loud chunks of money that went in over there. And Jesus knows exactly what he's talking about because he says this, for they all contributed out of their abundance, but she, out of her poverty, has put in everything she had, all she had to live on. She gave generously. How do you know she gave generously? Well, she gave more than the world thought was wise. There were definitely people there that would have been like, why would you do that? You gave all you had. You gave a lot. You gave more than people would think was wise. And if you ever find yourself giving away more of your money than the world would tell you is wise, that's probably an indication that you're on the right track. If people would look at you and be like, why would you give so much money away? Like if your accountant at the end of the year is doing your taxes and says, hey, you gave more away than you had to, you're probably on the right track. I think that's fantastic. She gave more than anyone would expect. Nobody would have expected that. Nobody's looking at that widow thinking, wow, she's going to put in her 2 last coins, and yet she did it anyway. She gave in a way that demonstrated trust in Jesus. She literally was like, God, I trust you so much. I'm just going to give you what I've got left and just trust that you're going to help me figure it out. So how do you and I learn to give like that? Well, I've got 3 ideas today in this sermon on generosity. The first is this: make a plan for generosity. I think we should just make a plan for generosity. Have you noticed how in general, when you make a plan for stuff, it will just tend to go a little bit better? Now, I'm not saying you got to plan everything. I'm a planner. I've admitted this before. Whatever. Like, I'm a planner for some stuff, and I know you can't plan everything. Like, you don't have to plan the perfect trip to the grocery store. Like, you don't have to do that. I've done that. That doesn't go well. But I'm saying in general, life works better when you make a plan. Like, if you say, well, I'd like to do something different with my life, you probably need a plan for it. This is why I know that, because Luke says this in the 14th chapter, verses 28 through 30. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. What really is happening here is that Jesus is saying, hey, sometimes you need to make a plan. And I kind of get this story a little bit because the job that I do, where I do get paid, my vocational job, the thing that I go and do Monday through Friday, is a construction company. And what we do before we start a project is we set a budget. We think about it. On Friday, I went up with Yuri. He's a project manager in my construction company. And we looked at a job. And we were like, hey, well, we're going to start this job. And do we have enough money to buy the material to get the stuff to do the job? Because if we started the job, this is a really interesting job, we have to rip off an old roof and then put on a new roof. And if we ripped off the old roof and we didn't count the cost and we didn't have enough to put on the new roof, I guess the customer would be pretty upset because it's going to like snow up there, right? So you got to kind of count it out. Do we have all the material that we need to rip off the old roof and put on a new roof? You got to count the cost. You got to make a plan. And I'll tell you that generosity won't just happen. You need to make a plan for it. Here's what won't happen. You won't wake up someday and be like, I'm generous now. Now it's generosity. I've had it. I'm going to just do it. It won't happen. So you take a look at your income and you take a look at your expenses and you ask yourself if you have made room for generosity. Ask yourself, have I even made room for generosity? Or is it not working out well and I'm living so close to the edge, so tight, that when opportunities for generosity come up, I can't even participate in them? Here's how we do it at our house. We live below what the world says we could afford. If you just look at our house, if you just look at the thing, the world says, based on our income, we could have a bigger house with nicer things, and we try to live below that. Whatever the world would say we could have, Penny and I have just decided we're going to just try to live below that because that will give us the opportunity to give generously so that we have capacity with our money to be generous. If you walked in here today and you were like, hey, I can't even talk about generosity, much less tithing, because we're barely making it, we would love to talk to you about that. We have people here that would love to help you figure out a budget and figure out how to get that stuff figured out. If you need help with that, this is a church. That's what we do here. We help people with this kind of thing, right? So you make a plan. Here's another idea. Look at your expenses every month and ask yourself, is there something we're spending money on that would be better used somewhere else? And if so, let's make a plan to do so. I was doing a little research this week, and this is something I found out. It was just kind of funny. I just looked it up, and I saw that the average Starbucks customer spends between $30 and $100 per week at Starbucks. That's what I learned this week. I just was checking it out. The average Starbucks customer, I'm not picking on Starbucks. If you like your Starbucks, that's cool. I'm not bagging on it. Anybody that's in the room with a Starbucks cup, you don't have to hide it underneath you. That's fine. Like, don't worry about it. You don't have to do that. Here's what literally happened, though, in our house recently. Several weeks ago, for a couple of weeks, I got in the mindless habit of just going to Starbucks every day. I would go to the gym in the morning, and then I would pick up Starbucks on the way home, and I would bring it home to Courtney, and I'd bring something home to Penny, and she doesn't even like Starbucks, and I'd bring home something for myself. And then one day, after this has been going on for a couple of weeks, Penny just comes to me, and she goes, hey, do you not like our coffee anymore? And I was like, our coffee is great. And she goes, okay, do you not like the food that we have in the refrigerator? And I was like, no, it's fantastic. I think it's great food in there. And she's like, why are you going to Starbucks every day? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I just got into the habit of it. I just got off track and I started doing it. And she said, seems like maybe we don't need to do that. And it's not that we don't have the money. It's not like we were like, can't make the mortgage payment because we were at Starbucks. It's just that it was kind of a waste of money. It was just kind of something we didn't need to spend money on, and it starts to add up. And if you say, well, hey, I never go to Starbucks, well, that's great. Take a look at your income and take a look at your output. Check out your streaming services. Do you need all of them? I know a lot of people that have told me in the last couple of months, I got rid of cable, but now I have 17 streaming services. I don't think the math is math in there. I just don't think so. Take a look at the eating out. Take a look at Amazon. Hey, Jeff Bezos has plenty of money. He doesn't need any more of yours. Just take a look at it. And I'm not vilifying any of this. I'm just saying make a plan. Take a look at your expenses and ask yourself, are there things we spend money on that are limiting our ability to be generous? And then ask yourself, is this what we want to be spending our money on, or has a bad habit happened? Have I just become sort of like Pastor Mike, who got in the bad habit of going to Starbucks 4 or 5 days a week until somebody pointed out, his wife pointed out, that don't seem like a good idea. Just take a look at your thing and say, do we have a plan or do we have a habit? Start today and make a plan for generosity. Second thing I want you to know is this: practice generosity. Just get in the practice of it. Just try it on. Practice generosity. If you haven't been to the gym in 5 years, don't go tomorrow and try to do Arnold Schwarzenegger's workout. Like, don't do that. Don't go tomorrow and try to do Brian Shaw's workout. Don't do that. That's not a good plan. But you can start somewhere. Like, walk in the room, get on a treadmill, check it out, ask around, talk to somebody, right? If you haven't been eating well for a long time, don't just stop eating all food for the next 3 months. Like, that's not a good plan, but you can start somewhere. And that's what I would tell you with generosity. Just start practicing it. This is the second part that I was telling you about in Corinthians. 2 Corinthians 8, 1-5. This is what Paul says. We want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. For in a severe test of affliction, their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. Well, that don't even make sense. I'm going to read it again just to check. Maybe we got a typo in there. This is what it says. Their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. For they gave according to their means, as I can testify, and beyond their means, of their own accord, begging us earnestly for the favor of taking part in the relief of the saints, and this not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God to us. These people that were in their own type of poverty knew that there were others that were in worse shape than them, and so they gave generously. And Paul's like, I wasn't expecting this. This isn't what I was expecting. And so then later in that verse that I read you in verse 8, that's where he says, I want you to excel in this too. It was so good for them that I want you to excel in it too. Paul's like, this church was so greatly blessed because they were giving abundantly over and above, and they were so much better for it, and I want that better for you. Practice generosity. Just start. Give it a try. Bump up your tithe to 11% so that you can be generous, or 12 or 15, and just see what happens. Give money to the playground fund and watch how you feel when it goes in. I know Brian is doing everything he can to break ground on that project, but I promise you this, when the playground is up and you see and hear the kids playing on it, kids who gave the first money to that playground, you are going to be so grateful that you got in on it. When you see little kids playing on that and going down slides and running around, when you're serving in kids ministry and you're like, hey kids, let's go to the playground. Let's go to the playground that we built together. You're going to be so glad that you contributed to that. And there's a lot of other ways to be generous. Send a kid to camp. Designate some extra money to one of our ministry areas. Give kids ministry or youth ministry an extra offering over and above your tithe. Don't take your tithe and start telling it like the church what to do with it instead. I'm not saying that. That's directed giving. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying over and above your tithe, be generous. 2 weeks ago, we had our budget meeting, and the staff all came in with their requests, and every one of them was asked to cut their budget significantly, and they did it without grumbling. That's what happens in a church. They've got ideas, they've got plans, they've got thoughts. I bet we could do this and this and this. And they put all their thoughts together, and then they're like, we don't have quite enough money for that, so we're going to have to ratchet it back. And that's fine. We do that all the time. All of us do that all the time. You might decide like, hey, I would like to have all this new furniture, and it just doesn't work this month, so I'm going to get a chair now. And next month, maybe I'll get a rug or something like that. The same thing can happen at the staff. That's fine. But what would happen? What would happen if the church was generous? What if generous people said to them, hey,